Let's take a look now at the sits and the players we're trying to avoid. This is the guys for Dave. So Joe Burrow, Dak Prescott, a couple quarterbacks that Dave said sit. Brian Robinson, Dave alluded to it earlier, 10 carries, 70 yards, no catches, no touchdowns in that Week 3 loss against the Bills. Najee Harris and Mike Evans. So Dave, let's start with Brian Robinson there. So again, 7 yards per carry. He was really good in the first 2 games, but Philly's run defense is just a much different animal right now.
2.8 yards per carry allowed to running backs through the first 3 weeks of the season. And you'll say, oh, well, look at who they played. They haven't played anybody good. It's still 2.8 yards per carry. Robinson last week, I mentioned this, had decent work, looked good doing it, and then the Commanders got away from him as they were chasing points. That same exact situation could happen in Week 4 against Philadelphia. It makes me nervous to trust Brian Robinson. I'm okay with it in non-PPR as a low-end start, but in full PPR, no way. You should go in a different direction, including Devon Achane. If you picked him up, use him ahead of Robinson. Easy choice.
I totally agree on that one. And then Mike Evans is a sit for you, which I think a lot of people are going to say, what?
Yeah.
He's sitting one of the hottest receivers in fantasy. He's got a touchdown in each of the first 3 games. He's been the go-to guy for Baker Mayfield, but the history against Marshawn Lattimore is absolutely atrocious.
It's not just Marshawn Lattimore, Jamie. It's the Saints in general. 9 straight games against New Orleans. He's failed to even hit 13 PPR points. We're looking for more than 15 from him. We're looking, honestly, for like 20 from Mike Evans. And now Lattimore is going to play. There were a couple games in that streak of 9, skid, I should say, that Lattimore didn't play, and he still struggled. And now it's Baker Mayfield, who's going to be under pressure on a short week against a Saints team that's looking for a win back at home. I'm nervous about him. I have moved him up. He's no longer a low-end number 3 wide receiver, more of a high-end flex in PPR, because I still think he's going to get that target volume. Could finish this game 6 catches, 70 yards. That would be decent. That would be 13 points. Why am I saying that's decent? That would be a 10-game high for Mike Evans against these Saints.
It's tough. It's really tough, and just hope he doesn't get in a fight with Marshawn Lattimore, because he gets thrown out of games sometimes when he's facing this team. Joe Burrow had 49 pass attempts on Monday night. He got out of the game healthy, and he's got such an unbelievable matchup against the Titans, but this is a week to still avoid him?
I'm avoiding him until further notice. I mean, we need to see him look like the Joe Burrow of old. He has 2 completions this year on passes of 15 or more air yards. He's not challenging downfield. That's the biggest issue of all, and you're right. This is a great matchup. He would be a top 4 quarterback this week if he were fine, but he's not. We all saw it on national TV, and I think that Joe Burrow is someone that fantasy managers should actually try and sit this week, go in a different direction. Jordan Love on Thursday night, I love it, no pun intended. Even Jared Goff, on the road, he's been terrible. I would start him over Joe Burrow. Justin Fields, no one wants to trust him. Guess what? I would trust him over Joe Burrow this week.
It's tough. You know, hopefully, again, he takes advantage of the matchup, and we see maybe Jamar Chase or T. Higgins break a play here to help his fantasy production. So if you are stuck starting him, you can go that route. I still would start Burrow over Goff. I have a decision to make in one of my leagues, so I'm sticking with Burrow based on the matchup. Some guys I'm avoiding this week are DeShaun Watson, Joe Mixon in that same game, Rashad White, Garrett Wilson, and DeAndre Hopkins. Let's stick with Mixon, so we stick with the Bengals here. And so Mixon coming off a solid game against the Rams. However, if he did not score in that matchup, it would have been a very ugly stat line. And now he's taking on arguably the best run defense in the NFL. Yes, they did give up 2 touchdowns to Jerome Ford last week. Go look at the rest of Jerome Ford's numbers. So Mixon, if he's not catching passes, not finding the end zone, we could see a little bit of an empty stat line for him. Very difficult to bench someone like this, especially the position that he plays. But I would try and sit Joe Mixon if you can. I would start Devon Achane ahead of him. I would start Kyron Williams ahead of him. Zach Moss is an easy one to start ahead of Joe Mixon, so somebody I would like to sit. Let's stay in the same state and go to the other team in Ohio, and that's the Browns with DeShaun Watson, who is coming off a very big game against the Titans last week. However, a much different opponent this week, taking on the Baltimore Ravens, who are getting healthy in their secondary. So, Dave, is this going to be a matchup thing for DeShaun Watson every time he's starting, or can you actually trust him in this game against Baltimore?
I think it's going to be a matchup thing week in and week out. I don't hate Watson. I thought he actually looked great last week, and I think that he's going to need to throw the football against the Ravens this week. So, I like him better than Fields, I'll put it that way, but not a top 12 quarterback.
Well, if you like field goals, you'll like DeShaun Watson, because I think it's going to be a very low-scoring affair between the Browns and the Ravens. All right, make sure you check out our Fantasy Football Today podcast. Wherever podcasts are found, we give you all the starts and sits that you need, and we help you with your lineup decisions, because that's what we do. We're here to serve you and all of your fantasy football questions. Again, Fantasy Football Today podcast, wherever podcasts are found.